In this time drowning in remakes, reboots, and endless sequels, it's easy to catch yourself thinking of your favorite show or video game you'd like to see brought back, provided it would be handled with the appropriate care, and not this cancerous modern audience syndrome. And that's the catch, isn't it? In this time we've seen remakes and sequels handled well and badly. For every Dead Space, we've gotten a Metal Gear Solid trilogy. And for every Dune, we've gotten a Rings of Power. And for every new take on an old property that's been handled with care, there are 3 low-effort cash grabs right behind it. But possibly the worst case of a remake that had all the right things going for it, that had the potential to escape all the pitfalls, is the one that never saw the light of day. This is that story. The story of the remake that wasn't. The story of Fear Effect Reinvented. Fear Effect goes back to the PlayStation 1 era, more than a year and a half before Microsoft released the first Xbox, and roughly a year before Sega announced their departure from the console space, a time when Eidos Interactive was still a titan in the video game space, publishing games like Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and of course, Tomb Raider. Eidos games were iconic, and they helped to propel PlayStation into the cultural force they became. One of the studios Eidos owned was Kronos Digital Entertainment, based in Pasadena, California. Kronos actually started as a CG effects house, and their first venture into video games was when they produced the short animated intro to Sierra Entertainment's King's Quest VI. Kronos developed a few small games of their own after that, but their one and arguably only hit was a story-based survival horror game that came out exclusively on PlayStation. That was Fear Effect. In some ways, Fear Effect was like other survival horror games of the time. It had the same asinine tank controls and pre-rendered FMV backgrounds, but it was also distinct for its anime cel-shaded graphics and dark mature tone, which helped Fear Effect set a new standard for M-rated games on the PlayStation platform. Seriously, the subject matter, violence, and language are all in another league.
I had never experienced pain, and I so wanted to feel it now. I wasn't disappointed.
I always thought you were bitch from hell.
Set in a futuristic version of Hong Kong, the game puts players in the shoes of 3 anti-hero mercenaries, Hana, Glass, and Deke. During the game, you take control of each character at different points, and though they functionally play the same, they do have unique weapons and personalities. Hana is an assassin working for the Chinese Triad, though she doesn't serve by choice, as she was sold to the Triads as a child and started out working in a brothel. I told you, the game doesn't shy away from going dark. Glass is a former American Special Forces soldier with ties to a shadowy intelligence agency. Cold and calculating, Glass has little patience for anyone who would waste his time. Deke is presented as a psychopath who enjoys mercenary work a little too much. While the other two carry a stoicism from their jaded past, Deke is the only one who always seems to be having a good time. That and his Aussie accent give Deke a natural charm that's hard not to like.
The name's Jacob. Me mates call me Deke.
Look, Dick.
Deke!
Whatever.
At the start, the 3 are in pursuit of Wei Ming, the daughter of a powerful Triad boss. Wei Ming ran away from home after learning of her father's less than honorable dealings, and our pro-tag trio reason that if they can reach the girl first, they can ransom her back to her father for a big payday.
Don't worry, Glass. If we reach his little runaway first, Lane will pay us handsomely to get her back.
Of course, the job goes wrong almost immediately, leading players into one hellish scenario after another, until literally winding up in hell. Or at least an Eastern mythological version of hell. Roughly a year later, Fear Effect got a sequel, Retro Helix. The second game is technically a prequel, taking place before the events of the first game, and tells how our trio of mercenaries met and formed a team, while also introducing a 4th character, Rain Quinn, a mysterious blonde who doesn't remember much about her past, but is enjoying her present as Hannah's partner. And yes, that word carries all the additional connotations you think it does. Retro Helix took what worked in the first game and dialed it up to 11, with an even more insane plot, more puzzles, violence, and gratuitous sensationalism. While it didn't appeal to everyone, Fear Effect did make a name for itself with a sizable fan base, decent critical reception, and more than one online controversy, thanks in part to IDOS's hyper-sexualized advertising campaign. I mean, wow. I can't imagine why every gaming publication refused to run that ad. The series' success came to a crashing end when the third game, Fear Effect Inferno, was cancelled late in development. IDOS had been experiencing some financial hardships, not the least of which had been brought on by Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness' failure to perform commercially. In the wake of this, series developer Chronos Digital folded when they failed to attract any publishers for their other games. But the games did spawn a couple of comics, and at one time IDOS had even optioned the movie rights to German filmmaker Uwe Boll. Nothing ever came of that, the movie was never produced, and Fear Effect slowly faded into obscurity. It would take a decade and a half for another Fear Effect game to see the light of day. After IDOS was bought out by Square Enix, some old IPs were piled in a bin under Square's collective initiative. This allowed Square to sell off the rights to old IPs they weren't interested in pursuing with any of their first-party studios. French indie developer Sushi Interactive took up Fear Effect and produced Sedna, an actual sequel to the first game, which was released in March of 2018. Sushi's game was part isometric shooter, part survival horror, attempting to honor Fear Effect's past with similar puzzles and brutal fail-state death animations. Sedna brought back the original cast and added a new member, French intelligence agent Axel. Not long after Sedna dropped, it was announced that Sushi was working on a full-fledged remake of the original Fear Effect, entitled Fear Effect Reinvented. An early trailer got the hype going as players of the original games looked forward to seeing this old classic reimagined on current hardware. But the hype soon dissipated when Sushi's original release target came and went with no game. Though they attempted to maintain some energy by releasing occasional updates and some concept art, that too fell off. Then word came in 2019 that Sushi was no longer working on the game, and that Forever Entertainment had handed production off to Megapixel Studio. After this, Fear Effect Reinvented disappeared into a PR black hole. There was no information until August 2022, when Forever showed off the game for the first time with a new trailer and gameplay footage that teased the game was coming, quote, sooner than you think. After the reveal, Forever went back into blackout mode, refusing to offer any updates or information. After months of silence, many began to speculate that the game had been cancelled. Speculation that Forever was quick to shoot down, telling gamers on X that the game was still being worked on and still coming out. But in September of 2023, a Polish gaming site reported that Fear Effect Reinvented had indeed been cancelled. This was reportedly later confirmed on Discord. A few weeks later, Fear Effect's X account disappeared entirely. It's a sad end to a bizarre series of events that points to big problems behind the scenes. Fear Effect Sedna had its shortcomings with level design, some lackluster combat, and weak puzzles. But it was made by a team who were passionate about Fear Effect. The developers at Sushi were clearly fans of the original games and wanted to honor them. I believe they brought this same level of care and enthusiasm to the remake of the original game, so it's hard to know where things went wrong. There were reports that the second team essentially started over from scratch when they took over development. Pandemic lockdowns have also been blamed for the development woes this game suffered. But regardless, the lack of communication and openness after development changed hands reeks of a situation where the new dev team that were handed the project did not care about it, working on it out of contractual necessity, not passion for the material. I don't know enough to speak on what Forever Entertainment's community engagement is usually like, but in this case their posture was overly defensive, bordering on antagonistic towards the fanbase they were hoping to appeal to. And don't even get me started on the mishap of telling players that a game is coming sooner than they think, and then go into blackout for months. Seriously, devs, don't do this. It turns even the most ardent fanboys into doomsayers, and chills whatever hype your project might have had into ice-cold apathy. The mismanaged catastrophe that has been Fear Effect Reinvented is a great example of what not to do when revitalizing an old game. Just in case anyone's watching, here's a few pieces of advice. First, don't start something unless you have the resources to finish it. Sedna was at least in part crowdfunded through a successful Kickstarter campaign. Knowing that there was community interest in the remake, another campaign would likely have received support as well. Second, treat community engagement as part of the process from the beginning. Games like Fear Effect still have a fan base, and it is this group that is most interested in seeing a remake or remaster. Their support is key for any such endeavor, as they will be the first ones to get excited. They drive engagement on social media and help spread word. They'll be the first one in lines to purchase the game, and it's their passion that will attract new players expanding the franchise. Third and last, have passion for the project. Don't hand remakes off to studios that don't care. When your creatives have love and respect for what they're working on, it's apparent to everyone. Just as apathy and laziness are easy to gauge as well. Passion can even cover a multitude of sins. fans are more likely to forgive shortcomings when other parts of the project are infused with care and consideration. They tend to be harsher on a product when it's obviously put out there to snag money from entrenched fan bases with little or no respect given to the actual contents. People will line up and demand you take their money for something they love, and they are merciless when they perceive that thing has been disrespected. But hey, that's just one rebel's opinion. What do you think? Are you a fan of the Fear Effect games? How do you feel about this debacle with Reinvented? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you'll get all the new updates from Rebel Normal.